Hey yo, it's artificial.
It's artificial.
Hey yo, it's time for the show.
Time for the what?
Hey yo, it's artificial. Hey yo,
It's time for the show.
check the credentials, just the initials, hit like a missile.
To spark the mental, the illest audio, hottest visuals.
We elevate the culture with facts while bridging the gaps. Off the rip though, it's artificial. What's good, folks? We're back with that 90s show. I'm your boy Z.
90s. What up? My name is Augie, man. I'm here. We got our boy in the building. He's a producer, artist, 90s connoisseur. He's worked with some of the greatest and the best in the business. Some go by Chris Brown, some go by Pitbull, some go by Zed. I mean, geez, the list just doesn't end. We got our boy Marc Lo in the building.
Marc Lo's in the building.
How y'all feeling, man?
I'm feeling good, man.
Good.
It's good to have you, man.
Absolutely.
It's good to have you.
Thanks for coming out.
Yes, sir. So we're gonna go right into this. So from the 90s, we were talking earlier about how the 90s really influenced us or whatever.
Yeah.
In this time period, we see a lot of young folks or whatever like rocking the 90s, but they have no clue about the 90s. You know
Very
what I mean?
disconnected of really what went on in the 90s.
They didn't grow up in the 90s. They might have grew up in the 2000s, but
Did you grow up in the 90s though, bro? You were born in the 90s. I grew up in the
come
90s.
on, man.
I lived in the 90s.
I mean, technically, we grew up in the 90s,
yeah,
Later.
later.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, but to say it all, man, I think that one thing that I really like about you, man, is just your influence and your presence on the 90s. So I wanted to kind of go into this game of name that 90s, whatever it is. So I brought, I didn't bring it, but I have a movie that I think really depicts kind of like what the 90s meant to me, which was The Goodfellas.
Goodfellas.
Probably my favorite.
That's
so.
a classic right there.
Yep.
That's a
a
sick
classic.
movie.
I like that movie because it kind of reminds me of like the Wu-Tang, right? And I think about like each person facilitating a certain area. Like you got Paulie in there, Joe Pesci's character. You got Ray Liotta's character. You got, Robert De Niro. And they all facilitate certain things and they all have different stories and different perspectives. Yeah. I felt like with the Wu-Tang, it was like you got Method Man, you got Raekwon, you got all these dudes.
Can you name them all? Can you name them all?
Man, Inspector. I mean, there's a lot though. Inspector Deck, RZA,
RZA,
Jizza, You God. Yeah, wait, did I get them all? Okay.
No, you did not get them all. You got like 4.
Master Killer.
Master Killer.
Okay.
Inspector Deck.
I think I got them all.
No, you
Method
didn't.
Man. Who else?
There's one guy that is.
ODB. Oh, the.
ODB, yeah.
There's one guy that you got to include that wasn't official.
Yeah.
Come
Okay.
on.
All right, give it to
Testing
us.
your knowledge. Capadonna.
Capadonna.
Okay,
gotta get
Capadonna.
it.
There we go. Okay, well, they trying to school me here, but at the end of the day, I really enjoyed, Enter the 36 Chambers, probably one of my favorite albums of all time.
Crazy.
But as it kind of relates to, the Goodfellas or whatever, like to me, I felt like, the way Scorsese like directed that, different perspectives, different, illustrations and just, I feel like that kind of dictated my upbringing, even like with gangster rap and all that stuff. It was kind of like really our first time with that perspective of the gangster being a little bit more told from the beginning to the end. You know what I mean? You see Godfather and those things, but this was more of like an in-depth,
Let me just add on the upbringing because I'm Sicilian.
Preach on it.
I'll be honest. Like Goodfellas for me was like my entire family just take the violence away. Like the big characters, the big cars, the fur coats, like just the whole attitude, the everything about it was how I grew up.
Everybody named Polly in your family and
we got
Maria and
we got Vinny, we got Maurice, we got Mario, we got Nickies. There's a couple Nickies.
Okay.
I got a Nicky in my family too.
Okay.
Maybe I'm part Sicilian.
You might be.
You got a little Sicilian in his blood. But so what did you bring? I mean, tell me about it.
Speaking of Wu-Tang, which is interesting, my introduction, because I was really young when this album came out, but my introduction to Wu-Tang was a song called Hit 'Em High. on the Space Jam soundtrack.
Yeah.
Woo.
I hit him high, hit him high,
Yeah.
hit him high, and you hit him low. I'm coming straight through the hole. You ain't got no game. I'm breaking you out like a break. That was my introduction to Wu-Tang. Like before that, I hadn't even heard of these guys, and it was crazy because that was like a great introduction. That was like one of my favorite albums from the '90s.
Yeah, Space Jam. I
Space
mean,
Jam.
that's crazy. Yeah,
No, that's one of my
Super
favorite albums for
influential,
sure.
yeah.
Crazy. From Quad City DJs, because I'm from Miami and like we grew up heavily on like bass music and booty music and like I mean, just to be frank, just to be Frank Sinatra. Yeah, when that came out and come on and slam and welcome to the jail. Come on, that right there, I was like, man, I'm at home right now. Plus the influence of basketball in my life. I was a big basketball head, and Michael Jordan with that movie and the Looney Tunes, like all of that just like had me on 10. So
they bringing that back too. They doing a Space Jam 2.
they bringing the Space Jam 2 out, man.
Is that with LeBron?
That's with LeBron. LeBron's in it. 80's in it.
You might be in it. Come on, let's go.
Hey, am I allowed to say? No, I'm not allowed to talk about that right now.
But wow, that's crazy.
Secrets are coming out.
But yeah, man. So with the Space Jam and even the kicks, I mean, I think like we're seeing a lot of this kind of resurgence of the '90s right now, right?
Definitely. Yeah, man. I mean, everything is cyclical, like right. So in the '90s, the influence was the '70s. So. And, it always comes back in like 20-year cycles, 15-year cycles. So, you have kids discovering all that stuff now from like the fashion side to like, how TLC used to dress. I was in the studio with this, 21-year-old writer, and she looked just like Chili, like from the baby
really?
hairs.
Oh, man.
And the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that's the vibe though. It's been gone for so long that it feels fresh. It feels new.
Why do we hate on the generation before though? Always. So like, I can remember when people were like, I wish it was the 80s again, right?
Yeah.
And now the 80s are like more passe and the 90s are popular. But I remember not that long ago when we were like, man, we dressed like shit in the 90s. Like everything was oversized and throwbacks. And like, I was telling him, me and my boys, we would get our jeans so big that we would use industrial tape on the back of our shoes and we'd tape the back of the pant to the shoe, so they'd never drag or hang down. They'd always sit the exact way. I mean, that's crazy when you have to like create some kind of contraption just to look a certain way. You know what I mean?
Right
but now that's coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, your jeans would hang on the floor and they'll just like get scraggly. They
get all gutter.
Now, question is that something that you feel excited about that it's coming back?
Bro, I mean, for me, it's been back for a while because I've been into it for like years.
Yeah, this is your real look right now,
I mean, y'all told me that we were doing this '90s vibe. I was like, all right, I mean, I don't have to do much work. That's my entire closet. It's just like '90s vibes.
Yeah,
I think there's good and bad with it though. I mean, I think if you're gonna wear like 5X shirts and like gigantic pants, like I don't know, that just looks weird to me. But at this point,
maybe not. Maybe you know how to rock it in a way that
looks right.
Yeah, that looks fresh.
One thing
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it. I mean, I lived through that. I haven't seen it yet.
I think you did mention something earlier, which was about like the style. To me, I feel like the style back then and even now is more rebellious. I actually think that there's like concurrently, I feel like there is like a homage to that time period now where it's like we're kind of rebellious. I mean, we get this term, the millennials, right? Like I get this all as like a derogatory, like you're a millennial, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear it too.
I think back in the day in the 90s or whatever, like there was a lot of uproar. You had, I mean, I even talk about like Bill Clinton, right? And it was like the first time America heard a lie, like from the president. You know what I mean? Like seriously. But today we got Trump in the building, and we're seeing a lot of stuff, but it's actually right in front of us.
There was Nixon before that though. He did lie.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, maybe not the first lie, but the first, like, oh my goodness. But one thing that I think is really cool is the rebellious attitude. You know what I mean? A lot of things changing during the 90s, and I think a lot of things are changing right now.
Big time.
I think I've noticed like millennials, like just they know what they like and what they want, and they're very clear about it, almost from a black and white perspective. Now, take the emotional blame and stuff that millennials get out of the picture, because I think a lot of people think they're like wishy-washy on some things, but I've just found like the things that millennials want are dictating the way culture moves today.
Yeah.
It's funny because like when I'm in a business meeting, I'm probably not the youngest person, but they think I'm the youngest person, and people call me a millennial all the time. I'm not. I'm 45 and I'm Gen X, but it's just crazy how people sling it like it's a bad reputation.
Totally. Yeah. So what did you bring, to the show as far as, you talked about the Space Jam, but I think you brought another piece of.
Oh, yeah, most definitely, man. One of my favorite 90s, pieces. I actually made a song about it.
Okay.
I made a song about this piece?
I did make a song about this piece.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's called Coogi Sweater.
Okay. Can we get the Coogi sweater?
Grab the Coogi sweater real quick. Show the people what we're
Woo!
working with.
Bam.
This is actually a vintage. This is original.
Wow. That takes me back to,
Like
I love it when you call me Big Pop.
it's a cross between Biggie and Huxtable.
Huxtable.
Yeah, it's a cardigan.
You know what I'm saying? Like Heath, what's his name? Cliff Huxtable?
Cliff
We're
Huxtable,
talking about
yeah.
Cliff Huxtable, not Bill Cosby. Shout out Bill Cosby, but
Let's go.
This is a Coogi. Yeah, they definitely rocked these well back in the day. Actually, Biggie rocked these shades with this sweater.
Nice. Wow. Like visually, I love those patterns. I know they're over the top. I know I could never wear one just because I'm a translucent dude.
Could. I think you
but
could.
at the end of the day,
there's
there's so much flavor in those, and I love how they come together.
Yeah, they feel good on you when you put it on. Actually, it's an Australian brand too.
Yeah.
It's an Australian
Really?
brand. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely came from over there. Just like I think inspired by just their native people's patterns and stuff like that. I love it so much. I have a bunch. I almost gave a few away just because my closet was just getting so full. I almost gave a few away.
You just been collecting.
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
I went on the spree.
Yeah,
especially
I do that with all kinds of things, man.
Especially when I put out that song "Coogi Sweater" Nostalgia. I still have them all, but I almost gave them away. My fiance, she was like, "What are you doing? Like, how dare you try to give these away?"
So let me ask, what's the reaction when you wear a Coogi sweater on the street? Obviously, you're in the industry, and there's a lot of style and flavor there. But just
every single time, man, somebody's like, "Hey, man, that's a nice sweater. I love that." I'm sure some people, people will be like, "Damn, he look crazy with all them colors." But
it takes some balls to wear a Coogi sweater today, though. I think you have to own it.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to own it. You're not just like.
I love clothes that that pop out and make it's just like
make some noise, right?
Yeah, it makes some noise. It's like a vibe, It's just different from what it's not like a plain white tee.
You know what I miss the most? I mean, and what that's reminding me of is Keith Haring. His visual graphics or whatever, like artistically, to me, are like some of the best, art from the 90s.
It's actually coming back right now. There's a diamond collab with his estate. And they've got all these really cool Keith Haring designs.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's almost like Keith Haring's designs melted into a sweater pattern or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang, that would be a fire Keith Haring Coogi kind.
Oh, yo.
That we said we just created that. Hey. You heard it here first. ArtOfficial show.
Hey, you know who the first model for that is going to be, right?
Yep.
Let's go. And so, Z, what'd you bring, man? What you got?
Man, I wanted to talk about something from a musical perspective.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Hip hop specifically. This album was released in 1995.
Okay.
Personally, the biggest influence, I have a lot of influences for me musically, but this one really changed the way, I think I wanted to produce music and the way I wanted to spit back then. Might possibly be the greatest duo of MC and producer of all time. At least it's on my top.
Yeah.
They basically took a collective style and they took gangster rap. It was really lyrical. They were all about their craft, and they have basically a gangster album that garnered commercial success. And you guys probably know it from the one single that stood out the most and it stood the test of time, and that's Shook One's Volume 2.
Oh, you didn't just bring the Shook one now.
The infamous album
Right.
here, which I think is probably one of the best albums in hip hop history. But, I mean, ask any battle MC what they want you to throw on.
Oh, man.
Spit to.
Now, I know this
It's
is
gonna be
not the
Shook One's Part
90s,
2.
but 8 Mile, when that comes on, you know what I mean? When the Shook One's track comes on, it's just like, yo, it's going down.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
stirs you up. Yep.
Yeah. But honestly, those dudes were 18 years old at that time. I mean, they were super young, and the lyrical ability, I mean, back then, oh my goodness.
They were just living the life, man. And that was just, they were just reporting on what they were doing live from Queensbridge,
Yeah.
But what's crazy is that album has some great collabs. I mean, there's Raekwon, there's Nas. They were just doing their own thing separate from Nas. Nas was in a different building on a different street. And if you ever have a chance to, I would say get the Prodigy audiobook, because it's Prodigy in his own voice narrating it.
Oh, really?
It's really
Sure.
sick.
I'm gonna do that.
And he talks about how, man, we were in the club, we were in the tunnel, we were really robbing people. Like he goes through the whole thing.
We was really robbing
about how they made this and like just their
Download
crew.
that right
But
now.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, what I got from this was not only lyricism. I got a tour of New York. Like I was able to go to New York and know everything about New York because of hip hop, right? Because I listened to it. Made me step my MC game up. So I just think The Infamous is an all-time great album, and
That's fire, man.
That's my contribution for today.
Top 3 MCs back then. What do you think?
Top 3 MCs.
I'm gonna just throw it out there. Spit
90s?
fire. Yeah, 90s.
Or-
90s.
I'm an R&B guy. I can't
90s.
speak on
It's
these
tough, man. Everybody was in that era.
Come on, man. Let's get a few. I mean,
Man, you got to put Tupac in there,
okay,
man.
Tupac is in there.
You gotta,
Yeah.
the poet, man. You got to put Tupac in there. Biggie, you got to put Biggie
gotta-
in
They're
there.
Yeah.
absolutely in there.
Yeah.
I would put Nas in there. I just think those first two
feel like-
albums were
Nah, it's okay.
just cinematic. It was something that I don't think people expected it when they heard it. I remember the first time I heard his first album. I was sitting in the car with a dude. He's like, "Let me play you this." He put a cassette in, and we listened to the whole entire album. And
Wow.
I was hooked after that.
Yeah. That dude lyrically is on a whole nother level. Like, he
Yeah,
just
and-
paints the picture so well.
What I like, the street vibe and the mafia vibe of it was written was dope too. I really like that.
Yeah.
So
Y'all might look at me sideways, but I'm gonna have to say Black Thought.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to say.
Black
Okay.
Thought.
Yeah, Black Thought.
Right now,
So,
like, that dude is crazy still.
I
Yeah.
would say Black Thought is the most overlooked MC of all time when
Totally.
you talk about
Shout out
the
Black
greats.
Thought.
Like,
Yeah.
Shout out Black Thought,
so,
man.
so you want me to share my theory on Black Thought?
Sure.
Talk to us.
Okay, so we talked about millennials. We're talking about the new culture. Like, I think there are like rules to the game that have kind of dissipated based on the popularization of the culture, and it's fragmented in a lot of ways. But like the hottest thing lately has been calling yourself a goat, right? Self-proclaimed goats. Now, my theory is like, okay, greatest of all time, there can only be one greatest of all time. But if you break it down into segments, you could have greatest lyricist of all time. You could have greatest producer of all time, greatest live MC of all time, right? But my thing is this. If anybody out there claims to be a GOAT, they need to step up to the GOAT gatekeeper, and I think that's Black Thought. If you can go bar for bar with Black Thought, then we can entertain you're a GOAT.
I'm just going to say, ain't nobody going to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So right there, I think we're just gonna nullify the whole conversation.
Just in my opinion.
Yeah, he's ridiculous. I mean, even on Jimmy Fallon, it's like he's up there, and they're like, "Yo, what about this word? What about this word? What about this word?"
He can do anything at any time, and he can
nobody's
do it for
touching
whatever
that,
the
man.
setting is.
Yeah. So
Yeah, Streams of Thought, Volume 2, I think it is, his latest album. Sick. It's pure MC. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I suggest everybody get that because it'll change your mind if you just think he's like a band member of a late night show. Because some people probably think that.
Totally. They
Yeah,
do.
of course,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. So, segueing into the next segment, you are definitely, we brought up this 90s, we're talking 90s hip hop, but 90s R&B.
Yeah.
I want you to take us into, your process and just kind of, do you feel like the 90s is defining today's culture?